Phase 2 of Wrath of the Lich King has been underway for around 2 months, and me being late to the party just finished all of the Phase 1 raids and content, and now I will give you my raw, non-biased opinion on Phase 1 from someone that's new to Wrath. Now, let's go super far back, September 26, 2022. Wrath Classic just came out. Like the rest of y'all, I took the boat to Northern, except the boat completely broke. Why wouldn't it? I couldn't log back into my main, which was the Hunter, because it just kept disconnecting me. So instead, I logged into my DK. Mind you, I wasn't going to level him at the start, so my bags were completely full of trash and were the OG 12 slot bags that the DK starts with. Later on, I made the DK my main. So, how was the questing experience? I thought it was great. I really liked the northern zones. Borean Tundra, amazing. Storm Peaks, amazing. Howling Fjord, marvelous. Shalazar Basin, ass. I made my way to level 80 slowly. I mean very slow, it took me 2 months to get to level 80. But the adventure was crazy. I like the 70 to 80 leveling more than the TBC 60 to 70, except I do think I enjoyed myself more leveling in the Grand and Zangarmarsh. Now, back to the point. After 2 months of slow leveling, multiple breaks, and taking 4 to 5 hours per level, I finally made it to a magic number 80. Now, on to the next thing. I think everyone knows what heroic dungeons are, but for the people that don't, heroic dungeons are a harder version of the dungeon. They drop better loot and also give emblems to buy epic loot. I ran multiple heroics every day to get some of my pre-raid base loot, and while I'm talking about dungeons, let me give you an opinion on them. Let's start with both Utgard dungeons. I think both Pinnacle and Keep are peak. I really dig the look they got. Next, the Nexus and Oculus. I like the Nexus, but it wasn't really my favorite, and I didn't like the Oculus, but that's because I don't like the whole mount combat thing. I love both Halls dungeons. You know what? Almost all the dungeons are boss, except Violet Hold. Violet Hold sucks so damn bad, bro. The next thing? There are 10 different reputations in Wrath, and as you can tell by this screenshot, I don't really find it necessary to get revered or exalted with some of the factions, but I don't know, it might be important later on. I did get revered with the Knights of the Ebon Blade to get the Reaper of the Dark Souls, which mind you, I still have equipped. Literally no better weapon drops when I do raids, and when it drops some other guy needs it too. Back to the reputation grind. The other reason I got a review with the Knights of the Ebon Blade is for enchantment, Arcanum of Torment, which is for the head enchantment. Not really a lot to say about reputations. I don't really do them that much, as you can tell by this Dragonfly screenshot. Now onto the big major thing. Phase 1 dropped 3 raids, Obsidian Sanctum, Eye of Eternity, and Ramus. Also Vault of Archivon, but I'm not really going to include it because it's not really a real raid in my eyes. I went and cleared the 3 raids, and I'm going to give you my opinion on them. Let's start with Obsidian Sanctum. Obsidian Sanctum is a 1 boss raid, but has 3 mini bosses around it, which makes it harder or easier depending on how many of the Drake mini bosses you leave around. And depending on how many Drakes you leave around, more loot drops. I really like the environment of the raid. The whole fiery type thing with the boss in the middle, it looks really cool. Now let's talk about the boss, Sartharion. Sartharion looks like a cooler version of the original Drake, and I would say it's a pretty cool boss fight and doesn't require lots of brain cells to understand the mechanics as a DPS. There's really not much to say about this raid because it's just minimal trash and a single boss that doesn't do anything too crazy, but I dig and I think it's an overall good raid. Now, let's move on to the Eye of Eternity. I did this raid a solid once. It's just a 1 boss raid that's alright. I do like the part where you go on a flying disc, but that's pretty much it. This fight was probably a lot crazier back in 2008, but now it's kinda mid. Now let's talk about my favorite raid out of the 3 that were released in Phase 1. Ramus is a 15 boss raid that was first released in Classic as a 40 man raid. I never played it, so this was a fresh new experience, something I feel not a lot of players had with Ramus. I love this raid. I think it's unique and has a really creepy mood with it. I'm not going to talk about each boss, but I'm going to say which ones I think were the cool ones. I thought Thaddeus was a cool fight, and let's be real, one of the bosses with a mechanic that you have to pay some attention to. The mechanic being watching what charge you have and depending on if you have positive or negative, moving to the side of the room that correlates with that charge. There's also killing the 2 mini bosses before Thaddeus at the same time, but that's pretty easy. Next up, another boss fight I thought was fire was the 4 Horsemen. I liked it because for basically all of the other bosses you don't have to have a strategy to defeat the boss because they're pretty damn easy, but for the 4 Horsemen you have to actually think for a split second before pulling them and starting the fight. I also like Kel'Thuzad, but the first phase of the fight was kind of a time waster. So, what's my non-biased, raw opinion on the Phase 1 content of Wrath? I think it's pretty good. I do think the raids could have been cooler, but like I said, that's my own opinion. I do think Karazhan was better than all 3 of the Wrath raids, but that's Karazhan. Now it's time to do Ulduar. Everyone always says how good of a raid Ulduar is, so my expectations are pretty high. When I find the guild, get a little better, I will go in, get my sick loot, and give a review of my experiences. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe and drop down a comment. If you didn't like the video, well, can you still like it? Thank you and see you next time.